of his head, where he'd been hit by the drunken Israeli whom he'd asked to leave and who had come back in with a piece of lumber from the construction site on the corner. Norman had the piece of lumber over the bar. He said the Israeli had sobered up, but was still in a Ceuta hospital. They talked about how come Irish people drank and Jews didn't, except for the guy in a Ceuta. Scotches kept appearing in front of Rashad. Chris would say it's on Norman, or it's on Dave, or somebody else. Rashad promised a man he couldn't understand he'd visit him in Wales, in a town he couldn't pronounce. Rashad wasn't even sure where Wales was. The Marine introduced him to another Marine, a skinny, dark-haired sergeant from the U.S. consulate in Jerusalem, Raymond something, a Mexican name, and he watched them standing shoulder to shoulder at the bar, their Adam's apples going up and down as they drank their pints of dark. Davis would switch from whiskey to beer. Listening to him and the Marine from Jerusalem, it sounded like they were arguing, the way they talked to each other. The Marine from Jerusalem handed Davis a set of car keys. He said no, he hadn't brought his shotgun along. Was he supposed to? How was he supposed to know Davis wanted it? Davis said because he'd told him. How was he supposed to shoot any birds without a shotgun? The Marine from Jerusalem said bullshit he'd told him. He hadn't told him nothing about a shotgun. Norman came along. He said, "All you want's a shotgun? What else you need, shells?" Norman had a Krieghoff over and under Davis could use, a $3,000 German beauty you barely had to aim. Norman motioned to Chris to set up a round, took his Campari and soda, and moved off again, adjusting his hard hat. Rashad got next to Davis again. "You say you're going on a trip tomorrow?" "About 10 days. "Where you going?" "I don't know. South, I guess." "What you need the shotgun for?" "Birds. Do some bird shooting." And maybe it was for something else he called bird shooting. Maybe he needed a shotgun along for protection. Rashad said, "I wouldn't mind seeing the countryside down there." "Whereabouts south?" But the Marine was bullshitting with the Mexican Marine again. Rashad hit his arm and said, "Hey, you want to get something to eat?" Davis said they were going to get some Chinese later on. Rashad lost 20 pounds, $3, in the slot machine. He lost 100 pounds throwing darts to one of the Canadian UN soldiers he'd met in the Hilton bar the night before, the asshole slapping him on the back and grinning as if they were a couple of old friends. Rashad sat down in a booth. Young Israeli chicks with long hair would look over at him, the way he was lounging against the wall with one leg up on the bench. The goddamn guy from Wales he couldn't understand, speaking English as if it were a foreign language, came over with 2 drinks and started talking to him again, while Davis and the Marine from Jerusalem kept yelling at each other and laughing. A skinny young guy, looked like a street hustler, came in. Israeli or maybe Arab. Rashad wasn't sure which, but the skinny guy looked familiar. Big high-heeled funny shoes and a cheap fake leather jacket. He went over to Davis. Everybody went over to him at one time or another, and had a Coca-Cola while he told Davis something, a long story. Davis listening and finally nodding and saying something. 1 minute laughing, clowning around with the Marine from Jerusalem. The next minute, quiet, serious, not showing any of the Jim Beam in him while he listened to the skinny Arab-looking kid. Rashad couldn't remember where he'd seen him before. It didn't matter. The skinny kid left, and Davis went on drinking. Rashad closed his eyes. He'd rest a few minutes. When he opened them, Norman was saying to him, "You're going to spend the night here, are you?" "Where's that Marine?" "Dave? I don't know. He left." The place was empty, except for Chris and Lillian and the Welshman hanging on the bar. Leaving the place, Rashad tried to think of what had been going on just before he'd fallen asleep. The Marine talking to the skinny kid. Yeah. It was cool outside, the street deserted. No taxis. Shit, not even any cars. About 6 blocks to the hotel. He could see the skinny kid, bony face, long hair, drinking his Coca-Cola in the bar. He could see him inside another place then. Yeah. Waiting for luggage. The skinny kid and the Israeli girl with a nice ass, meeting the man at the airport. The same girl talking to the Marine in the lobby. The Marine was gone, but he was still mixed up in it, wasn't he? Chapter 8. Rosen decided there was one employee at the King David who did nothing but watch for him. The guy would say, "Quick, here he comes," and they'd get the basket of fruit up to 732 with the note from Mr. Fink, the manager, with compliments and sincere good wishes for an enjoyable visit. Rosen had been living in the King David for 3 years. He'd go to Tel Aviv or Haifa for a couple of days, come back, and find Mr. Fink's note in the fruit. Usually Rosen ate the banana, apples, and oranges within a couple of days. This time the fruit remained beneath its cellophane wrapper, while Rosen paced the floor of his suite and stared out the window. It was a nice view, the lawn and gardens, the cypress trees around the swimming pool, and beyond the hotel property, the walls of the old city at the Jaffa Gate. Directly beneath his window, 7 stories down, was the terrace where Paul Newman and Eva Marie Saint had sipped martinis in Exodus. He felt protected within the familiar rooms of his hotel suite. The King David was home. They'd guard his privacy at the desk and the switchboard. But outside, on the road from Netanya to Jerusalem, setting a new personal elapsed time record of 55 minutes, he'd felt vulnerable. The country was too small to hide in for any length of time. He'd have to leave soon, fly to Athens or Paris. But to leave, he needed his passport, and to get it, he had to find Edie Broder. He pictured her lying in bed looking at him. Yes, at least 10 years younger in the dim light. Mature, a grown-up lady, but no excess flesh or fat. Nice tits. He pictured her back home in Columbus, his passport in the pocket of his safari jacket hanging in her closet. Come on, he had to think. All right. First, try to locate Edie. Check. Then fly out. Leave the car at Ben Gurion. He finally did, which would have saved him hours hunched over the phone, staring at the wall, if he'd thought of it earlier. He called Columbus, Ohio, Directory Assistance. They didn't have an Edie or an Edith Broder. The closest they could come was E. Broder. Rosen got a teenaged Broder girl out of bed at 4 a.m, 11 o'clock Jerusalem time, and asked for her mother. The sleepy, irritated voice said her mother was in Israel. Ah, Rosen said. Where in Israel? On a tour. Where on a tour? With some group. But the group went home. No, her mother had called. She was with another group. What other group? The girl couldn't remember. Think. Well, it sounded like Egghead. Egghead Tours, Rosen said. Where? Where did she call you from and when? Tuesday night from Tel Aviv. "You're a sweet girl," Rosen told her. "I'm going to send you a present." "Big deal," the sweet girl said. Rosen called Egged Tours in Tel Aviv. Yes, a Ms. Edie Broder had joined one of their tours, Hadassah Holiday, and was staying at the Dan Hotel. Closing in, Rosen called the Dan. The Hadassah group? Just a minute. Had gone to Hadera, to the kibbutz Shemuel for the day, returning this evening. 8 hours later, the Hadassah group was back, but Miss Broder was not in her room. Was there a message? Rosen hesitated, then said yes. Ask her to please call Mr. Rosen at the King David, Jerusalem. He felt better. He felt good enough, in fact, to shower and dress and leave the room for the first time in 2 days. Silva, the barman, placed a cocktail napkin in front of him and said, "Mr. Rosen, sir, we haven't been seeing you lately." He poured scotch over ice, adding a splash of water and a twist, then put out dishes of nuts and ripe olives. "Netanya doesn't have it," Rosen said. "There's only one city in Israel." "Of course, sir." Silva was Portuguese, born in Hong Kong, and spoke with a British-Israeli accent. To Rosen, Silva was the King David. Silva, the Oriental carpets, the bellboy who actually rang a bell as he paged and carried the guest's name on a square blackboard. Rosen eyed a tourist lady having her lonely cocktail and was tempted. Not bad, though a little too elaborate, with a fixed blonde hairdo you couldn't muss up, though you might chip it with a hammer. More the Hilton type, lost here in the quiet of the King David's lounge. No, he had enough going on and phone calls to make. 3 sundowners and quiet conversation with Silva would do this evening. He dined alone, 3 tables from the blonde tourist lady, went up to his suite, left it semi-dark, and phoned Tolly's apartment. There was no answer. He'd been afraid of that. Assuming she'd picked Mel up at the airport, this had been arranged more than a week before, she might still be with him, knowing Mel. He'd either be dictating letters, eating, or trying to get into her pants. Rosen wasn't worried about Tolly. She was a stand-up little girl. If Mel got obnoxious, she'd belt him, or else politely walk out. What did worry Rosen was the unknown. What might be going on out there in the near world? Tolly was alert. She sensed things, and he wanted to talk to her before he talked to Mel. Well, he would or he wouldn't. Rosen called the Pal Hotel, asked for Mr. Bandy, and Tolly's voice said, "Ken?" "Be cool," Rosen said. "Don't say my name yet. I'm your boyfriend calling or your mother, okay?" "Where are you?" Her voice was low. "Home." "Are you with Mel, Mr. Bandy?" "He's in the bathroom." Her voice rushed at him then. "There were 2 men here to see him. They threatened him. I didn't know who they were, the way they were talking, saying things about you, asking questions." "It's okay," Rosen said quietly. "Take it easy, okay?" "What were their names?" "I don't know. Mr. Bandy said first he was afraid when they were here and threatened him. Then he wasn't afraid any more when they were gone. He was like a different person. He said a terrible thing." "What did he say?" "He said they wanted to kill you." Her voice dropped. "He's coming out." Rosen could hear the toilet flushing. "Did the money come?" "Yes, But it was more this time. He could barely hear her. What? How much more? 2. Listen. Okay, tell him it's me. Tali? Don't worry. He heard her saying, away from the phone, It's Mr. Rosen. Rosen sat back in his chair in the semi-dark room, the Jaffa Gate illuminated outside beyond the garden. He looked at his watch, 10:15. He lit a cigarette and felt ready, a leg up on Mel, ready for Mel's openers. He began to think, if you never liked him much, why did you hire him? Rosie? Jesus Christ, man, I've been worried sick. I thought you were going to call this afternoon. I didn't know I was supposed to, Rosen said. They told you my flight was due in at 1:35. I've been sitting here, Jesus, worried sick. How was the flight, Mel? You feeling a little jet lag, I suppose? Rosie, Mel, just a minute. Ross, Rosen, even Al, but no Rosie, okay? Sorry. Christ, you're worried about that? Jean Valenzuela was here. Yeah, go on, Rosen said. I mean right here in this room. He's looking for you. Mel, a guy tries to run over me with a car and takes 5 shots at me. You think it's some guy off the street? I mean, he walked right in here. He says, where's Ross? He's not keeping it any secret. If I already know the guy's after me, Rosen said. No, forget it. Mel, tell me what he said. He asked me, he wants to know where you are. I told him I had no idea. I said I was here to see you on business, but now I wasn't sure if you'd contact me or not. What business? I tried to explain that the reason I was here had nothing to do with what was going on. What business, Mel? You said you wanted to...
bread into the juice till it's gone. Then the young ones get to lick the trough, and we go into the quarters for the night. There ain't no light allowed in the quarters. Time was, Mammy said, when she had a small bowl and made a lamp with a piece of cotton and melted pork fat. But up to the White House they saw the light and made her put it out. Kept the workers awake, they said. Course we be awake anyway if we want to. Just be awake in the dark. Light comes through the open door, and there are 4 small windows down the back wall. If there's a moon, there be good light. Light enough to see faces and talk. And even if there isn't a moon, enough comes from the stars and the lights from the White House to let us see a little. Those to work in the field are always tired, always caved in with work, and there ain't never enough to eat, so they be hungry too. They usually go to sleep as soon as they hit the corn shuck pallets on the floor. But the first night, when the new man was there, you could tell it was going to be different. He didn't even get on the floor, but went right over to the corner where Mammy put the pot to pray sometimes, and sat there. The new canvas pants were so stiff, I could hear them crackle and bend when he sat back against the wall. I was on the side of Mammy's shuck mattress along with about 6 young ones who were all kicking and scratching, so sleep wasn't coming. And I hear, "Who's got tobacco? I need some tobacco." It was a whisper, but loud, cutting from the corner where the new man sat. I had me some tobacco. It was just shredded bottom leaf that I'd been chewing to spit on the roses, but I kept some back in a wrapped piece of sacking inside my shirt dress, tied round my waist on a piece of string. I didn't say a word. You come on things to keep, and you keep them to trade for other things you need, like pork fat or pennies. He chuckled. low and rippling. Sounded like a low wind through willows, that small laugh, or maybe water moving over round rocks, deep and soft. "I'll trade," he whispered. "I'll trade something for a lip of tobacco." I thought, what you got to trade? You come in naked as the day you was born, come in bad with whip marks all up and down your back, not even a set of clothes or canvas pants, and you ready to go trading? I didn't say it, but I thought it. And he liked to read my thoughts. What I got to trade? What I got to trade for a lip of tobacco is letters. I knows letters. I'll trade A, B, and C for a lip of chew. He laughed again. And there I was, with the tobacco in my dress, and he said that, and I didn't know what letters was, nor what they meant. But I thought it might be something I wanted to know, to learn. So Mammy, she was sleeping, her breath moving in and out, and I wiggled out of the pile of young ones and moved to the dark corner and set my own self next to him. "What's a letter?" He smiled. "You sound like you got tobacco." "Not until I know what a letter is." "Why, it's reading. You learn the letters first, and then when you know them, you string them together into words. I'll trade you 3 letters for a lipful." I knew about reading. It was something that the people in the White House did from paper. They could read words on paper. But we weren't allowed to be reading. We weren't allowed to understand or read nothing. But once I saw some funny lines on the side of a feed sack. It said, 100 pounds. I wrote them down in the dirt with a stick, and Mammy gave me a smack on the back of the head that like to drove me into the ground. "Don't you take to that. Take to writing," she said. "I wasn't doing it. I was just copying something I saw on a feed sack." "Don't. They catch you doing that, and they'll think you're learning to read. You learn to read, and they'll whip you till your skin hangs like torn rags, or cut your thumb off. Stay away from writing and reading." So I did. But I remembered how it had looked, the drawings on the sack and in the dirt, and it still puzzled me. I dug in my dress and found the tobacco, but held it. "You saying you can read?" He nodded. "I give you something to read, you can read it, just like that?" "I can." There was some yellow light from the windows of the big house, and it came through the doorway and made a light patch on the dirt floor. "Come on." I led him to the light patch and squatted. I used my finger to scratch what I remembered in the dirt. The floor was hard packed, and I had to rub hard to make it show right. "There." He squatted and squinted. "Why, those ain't letters. Those are numbers." "Numbers?" He nodded. "Sure is. Says 100. Then there's those 3 letters on the end. They don't work for me as a word. Just LBS. Don't say a word. It must mean something to somebody. Can you teach me that?" "To read?" "To read what I just put there in the dirt. Can you teach me?" He rubbed his chin. "Well, mote be if I had some tobacco." I dug the sack out of my shirt dress and gave him a pinch. He put it in the side of his mouth. "Way it works," he said, "is you got to learn all the letters and numbers before you can learn to read. You got to learn the alphabet." "Alphabet?" He nodded. "There'd be lots of letters, and each one means something different. You got to learn each one. Those 3 you said back in the dark corner. Can you teach me those? I sure can. He used the edge of his hand to rub out what I had written in the dirt. Then he made a drawing with his thumb. A. Tonight we just do A. He sat back on his heels and pointed. There it be. I looked at it, wondered how it stood. Where's the bottom to it? There. It stands on 2 feet just like you. What does it mean? It means A, just like I said. It's the first letter in the alphabet. And when you see it, you make a sound like this. A or ah. That's reading? To make that sound? He nodded. When you see that letter on paper or a sack or in the dirt, you make one of those sounds. That's reading. Well, that ain't hard at all. He laughed. That same low roll made me think of thunder long ways off, moving in a summer sky. There's more to it. Other letters. But that's it. Why they be cutting our thumbs off if we learn to read if that's all it is? 'Cause to know things, for us to know things, is bad for 'em. We get to wanting. And when we get to wanting, it's bad for 'em. They thinks we want what they got. I thought of what they had. Fine clothes and food. I heard one of the houseworkers say they ate off plates and had forks and spoons and knives and wiped their mouths like they wiped their butts. That's true. I want it. That's why they don't want us reading, he sighed. I got to rest now. They run me 10 miles in a day and worked me into the ground. I need some sleep. He moved back to the corner and settled down, and I curled up to Mammy in amongst the young ones again. A, I thought. A. Ah. There it is. I be reading. Hey there in the corner, I whispered. What? What's your name? I be John. I be Sarny. Go to sleep, Sarny. But I didn't. I snuggled into Mammy and pulled a couple of the young ones in for heat and kept my eyes open so I wouldn't sleep and thought, A. Chapter 4. Come a hard time then. Come a awful hard time. There be a girl before then named Alice. She slept in the other end of the quarters, and as soon as she got big, she went to work in the fields, picking and hoeing. But she was addle in the head, off dreaming sometimes, and Mammy said one day that they would sell her. But her body was all right, and they in the White House decided she'd be a good breeder, so they set her for that. She didn't take well to it and fought, and they tied her to make it happen in the breeding shed back of the quarters. But it went bad on her head and her thinking. When it was done, she was worse than before. She wandered in the yard and sometimes even went up to the White House. Except for the house servants and gardening, we weren't allowed to the White House. And when the master one day caught Alice, he took her to the wall of the spring house. The spring house was where we got drinking water. It was made of stone and with heavy walls. They had rings of iron to be made in the walls many years past. Big rings of iron with chains and shackles, and they put Alice there and tore her clothes off. Then the master, he whooped her his own self with a rawhide whip cut from an old gin belt used on the cotton gin. Sometimes he doesn't whip. He makes a field hand do it and stands with his pistol in his belt and smiles. But sometimes he likes to take the whip, and this time he whipped her until her back was all ripped and bleeding. We had to watch. Every time there was somebody to be on the wall of the spring house and be whipped or other punishments, we all had to watch. When it was done, and she had screamed until she sounded like pigs being cut, he made Mammy to go to the salt house and get salt and rub it in the cuts to make more pain. I never heard a sound like that. I'd seen men whipped, but never that kind of sound. Cutting like that, high and higher until it whistled in my ears. Then he left her to hang there until the next day. The flies, they came, and Mammy went out and covered her back with a cloth and kept some of them off so they wouldn't make maggots in the cuts. Next morning, they took her down, and there was some maggot eggs, but not so bad. I helped Mammy clean Alice. We took her in the quarters, and Mammy, she rubbed grease on Alice's back, and I sat and held her hands because she kept trying to reach around and push Mammy's hand away. All the time, she don't say anything. Not a thing. Not even the silly things she used to say. And when we were done, she lay on the floor in the corner like she was broken. Broken inside. Mammy made her some root tea that smelled of bark, but Alice wouldn't drink it. She just lay there all that night and the next 3-4 days. During that time, John came, and I talked to him about A. Traded tobacco with him. For 2 nights, he didn't do no work on the trade and went to sleep right after the trough because the master worked him so hard. On the 3rd night after I traded for A, sometime that same night, Alice ran. My life is short, but some live long, and the one thing we know, short or long, it's wrong to run. Not wrong because it's wrong, but wrong because nobody ever gets away. I've seen 2 to try it, both men. One was an old man named Jim who just couldn't take no more, and one night he up and cut. They set after him the next morning with dogs, only the master. He don't only go his own self, but took 5 or 6 field hands with him to see, so they can carry what they see back to tell us. The dogs be mean. He feeds them things to make them mean, blood things. Sometimes he'll take them to the fields, and should a man or a woman work a little behind the others, or behind the best man, who is whipped to speed, why, he sets the dogs on the slow one. And he don't pull them off right away, neither. Lets them go until they taste blood and want more of it. They's mean, the dogs. They's big and red with tight hair and heads like hogs and mean as Waller his own self. He keeps them in a stone pen by the side of the horse barn, and they slobber and chew at the gate each time we walk by. Dirt mean. Jim, he ran at night too, but it didn't help. The field hands told us later. He cut and ran down to the river, ran in the water for a goodly distance, then on the top of a fence rail for as long as the fence ran, and then dropped to the ground and just moved. The dogs followed him all the way. The hands said that one dog even got up and ran on the top rail of the fence. Only took half a day, and they caught Jim. The last bit, when he heard the dogs singing him, baying on him, Jim climbed a tree. Problem was, the tree wasn't higher than he could reach nearly, and as high as he got, the bottom of him hung down where the dogs could reach him. The master set the dogs on him, and they tore and ripped what they could reach until there wasn't any meat on Jim's legs or bottom. The dogs ripped it all off to hang in shreds. The field hands say he still didn't let go, nor never did. Even when he was dead, his hands didn't let go, and the master made the field hands leave him there. Some wanted to take Jim down and bury him, but he made them to leave him that way, hanging by his hands in the tree for the birds to eat. Second man was young, name of Paulsen. He wasn't a big enough hand to be allowed to be a breeder in the quarters, and so he went a-looking. He snuck away and met a girl at a plantation down the road a piece, and they sat in the moonlight with each other some nights. Paulsen, he made it back before wake-up time every night but one, the last one. He fell asleep in his girl's arms, fell asleep in the moonlight. So they from the White House set out with the dogs, and Paulsen, he didn't run or try to get away. He was on his way home, but they let the dogs to have him anyway. Tear him up to bleed, but not kill him. Then, the master, he tied him down and cut him like he did the cattle, so he wouldn't run the girls no more. But the cut went wrong, and Paulsen, he laid all night and bled to death without ever making a sound in the corner of the quarters. So, don't nobody run. Besides, I don't think there's a place to run to. I heard talk once of some land north, but it's far away, and it's only talk. Not something to know, just something to hear, like birds singing, the talk of the land north, or the wind in the trees. But Alice cut and run that night. She didn't get far, down to the river and then sideways some. Her back was still ripped and sore, and she must have moved slow. She might have kept moving all night, but hadn't gone more than to the other end of the cotton fields, an easy small walk. Then she pulled herself under some brambles and was there when they found her. He let the dogs to have her. Didn't matter what she'd gone through or that her thinking wasn't working right. The field hands with him told us he smiled his big white smile, like the big white house, pale maggot white like his skin smiled, and let the dogs to have her. She didn't fight them or try to get away, and they just tore at her until her whole front was torn and gone, and she was bleeding from the chest. She didn't die. Alice be too tough for her own self-good. She didn't die, and he made the hands to carry her back and put her in the quarters. Mammy sewed up what she could with canvas thread and greased and patched, and she lived. She be like Paulie. She didn't make sounds even while Mammy was pulling at the torn flaps of skin and sewing them on her chest. Not a sound. Just stared and stared at the wall. That night, John called to me as he came past where I was trying to sleep. To back a girl. Time for another letter. I had been all day helping Mammy and was tired and sad for Alice. how she'd be at the other end of the quarters. But I went just the same. I still had 2 letters coming for that first pinch of tobacco. He was sitting on his heels in the open doorway. I squatted next to him. What's the next one? He used a stick with a sharpened end on it and wiggled in the dirt 2 half circles. B. B, he said. It be B. That sounds crazy. That's how you say the letter, B. It's for bay, or bee, or buh, or boo. That's how a bee looks, and how you make the sound. I made it sound in my mouth, whispering. So where's the bottom to it? I swear, you always want to know the bottom of things. Here it is. It sits on itself this way, facing so the 2 round places push to the front. Suddenly, he's gone. 1 second he's there, the next he's slammed sideways and gone. What in the hell are you doing to her? Mammy was standing there big and black and tall in the moonlight. What you doing to this girl? She had come from the side and fetched John such a blow on his head that it knocked him back into the wall and on his back. He come up quick and didn't cower none. Nothing. Not like you think. I'm teaching her to read. That's what I mean, Mammy said. What in the hell are you doing? Don't you know what they'd do to her if they found her trying to read? We already got 1 girl tore to pieces by the whip and the dogs. We don't need 2. I'd been quiet all this time, watching. Didn't seem so bad what he was doing, teaching me a few letters to know, maybe a word or 2. So I said it. Doesn't seem so bad. Bad! Then she hissed like a snake. Child, they'll cut your thumbs off if you learn to read. They'll whip you until your back looks knitted, until it looks like his back. She pointed to John, big old finger. Is that how you got whipped? He shook his head. I ran. And got caught. Not the first time. She waited. I waited. First time I ran, I got clean away. I went north, all the way. I was free. I had never heard such a thing. We couldn't even talk about being free. And here was a man said he had been free by running north. I thought, how can that be? You ran and got away, Mammy asked. I did. You ran until you were clean away? I did. And you came back? I did. Why? He sighed, and it sounded like his voice, like his laugh, low and way off thunder. It made me think he was going to promise something, the way thunder promises rain. For this. What you mean, this? To teach reading. It's never quiet in the quarters. During the day, the young ones run and scrabble and fight, or cry, and there's always a gaggle of 'em. At night, everybody be sleeping, but not quiet. Alice, she's quiet, but they some of 'em to cry. New workers who are just old enough to be working in the fields cry sometimes in their sleep. They hurt and their hands bleed and pain them from new blisters that break and break again. Old workers cry because they're old and getting to the end and have old pain. Same pain, young and old. Some snore, others just breathe loud. It's a long building and dark except for the light coming in the door and the small windows. But it's never quiet, not even at night. Now, it seemed quiet. Mammy, she looked down at John. Didn't say nothing for a long time, just looked. I had to think to hear the breathing, night sounds. Finally, Mammy talks. Her voice is soft. You came back to teach reading? John nodded. That's half of it. What's the other half? Writing. He smiled. Of course, I wasn't going to get caught. I had in mind moving around, teaching a little here, a little there, going to do hottie schools. But I got slow, and they got fast, and some crackers caught me in the woods. They were hunting bear, but the dogs came on me instead, and I took to a tree, and they got me. Another long quiet. Way off down by the river, I heard the sound of a night bird singing for day. Soon the sun would come. Why does it matter? Mammy leaned against the wall. She had one hand on the logs, one on her cheek. Tired. Why do that to these young ones? To Sarny here. If they learn to read and write it's just grief for 'em. Long-time grief. They find what they don't have, can't have. It ain't good to know that. It eats at you then, to know it and not have it. They have to be able to write, John said, voice pushing. He stood and reached out one hand with long fingers and touched Mammy on the forehead. It was almost like he'd be kissing her with his fingers. Soft. Touch like black cotton in the dark. They have to read and write. We all have to read and write so we can write about this. What they doing to us. It has to be written. Mammy, she turned and went back to her mat on the floor. Moving quiet, not looking back. She settled next to the young ones, and John, he turned to me and he said, Next is C. Chapter 5. Come more hard times. A week goes by, then another week. It's the time of year for planting, and the field hands have to work until they drop. Waller whips them past that, and they get so tired they don't know up from down. But John works with me. Not each night because he's too tired. Some of 'em to work in the fields can't even walk back. Have to be carried by others. But some nights he works with me. I learn a whole family of letters. All the fingers on one hand, two on the other. A, B, C, D, E, F, and G. He makes me to write them in the dirt and shows me how to take more than one of them and make a word. How the word is to be looking and how the word is to be sounding. Make it slow. Make the sound each time. First the letter, then the sound. Then make it to meet the sound from the next letter. Write B, say it, then A, and say it, then G. Bag. And I make the word. First word. Bag. I make the word. I couldn't believe it. I came to make the word. Don't matter what the word is, what it means, just to make the word. The first word. That's what caused the trouble. Me and that first word. I was so excited to be making a word, I went everywhere and made the word. I took a stick and rubbed a point on it against a stone, and round in back of the quarters, I made the word in the dirt. wrote bag, then said it. Bag. I rubbed it out with my heel and wrote it in a new place. Bag. Wrote it all over. Bag, bag, bag. Each time I rubbed it out and moved to a new place, and I was just looking at it. Last time I wrote it, wondering if I could use other letters to make other words, thinking how to make another word, when I hear the bull voice of Waller. "What are you doing?" A big hand grabbed the back of my shirt dress and dragged me up off my feet so I'd be hanging there. "Tell me what you're doing." He was ugly. Pale, white, maggot ugly. And I could smell his ugliness on him. White ugly. Stink of bad sweat and whiskey and smoke and fat food. I didn't say nothing. He shook me like a dog shaking a rat. I felt my eyes go to wobbling, and I just about messed. I still didn't say a word. "What are you scribbling in the dirt?" I thought, I'll lie. "Nothing. Something I saw in an old feed sack. I didn't know it was wrong to make it in the dirt." "It looks like writing to me." Holds me up. Closer. Stink of his breath in my face. White stink. Pig stink. "Don't know nothing about writing." He hit me then, beholding me with both hands, one on each shoulder so I'm facing him, and he quick drops one hand and hits me with his fist alongside the head as I fall. I saw lights, exploding colors. "Don't lie to me. You tell me the truth of it and I'll let you off. Where'd you learn to write?" "Don't know nothing about writing," I said again. I had dropped all the way down, and I was sitting in the dirt looking up at him, but it put me in a bad place, near his feet. Big boots. Black boots, but wrong kind of black. Bad black, not good black like John, Mammy, me. My mind rolled around like a sick dog. He kicked me in the stomach. "God damn you, don't you lie to me. I'll tie you to the spring house and get the truth out of you." "Don't know nothing about writing." He kicked again, but he missed. First time I had grabbed my stomach, rolled away, and on the second kick, I crawled, ran to get away, ran to the only place I knew, ran to the quarters, ran to Mammy. She'd be in the corner changing the grease and rag on Alice's back, and I ran to her dress and hid my head in the folds. "What?" She held my arm. "What are you doing?" "Hiding from him." "Who?" "Waller." But Waller, he owned it all. Wasn't no safe place. He owned all the land, owned the quarters, owned Mammy. He came into the quarters then and saw me and took me by the arm. He held me, but he looked at Mammy. "Who is teaching her to read?" "Sir?" Mammy gave him the big-eyed look. Looked like she don't know nothing since she be born. Waller, he stood, looking at her, breathing. Breath cut in, cut out like a saw cutting wood. I thought of the word, making the word bag. How making the word can cause all this, and I hated myself. "All right," Waller said, "if that's the way you want it." And he grabbed. Not me. I made the word, but he didn't grab me. He grabbed Mammy by the wrist and dragged her out of the quarters and across the dirt to the spring house and shackled her in the chains and bracelets on the wall. Then he left her there, hanging, and went to the house. I had followed them across to the spring house, and when he was gone, I went up to Mammy. "He's going to whip you," I said. I was crying. She sighed, soft sound, and she looked up at the sun and the trees by the White House. "Birds sure do sing nice, don't they?" They make the prettiest sound. It's all my doings. I pulled at the chains, but they don't give. I've been making the word and forgot where I was, and he saw me, and now he's going to whip you. Her eyes came on me then. I was crying, but she wasn't. Her eyes came on me, and they were sharp, and her mouth was tight. He would have whipped me anyway someday. Some other reason would have come along. He loves to use the whip. John. I thought of him. John will stop him. She shook her head. He can't. No matter what he says, it won't stop Waller from whipping me. Now you go along and bring me some water when they ain't watching. He won't whip me until close on dark when everybody's back from the field to watch. The sun is hot and I'll be getting a big thirst, don't I get some water? I snuck Mammy water through the afternoon, and she hung there. Way the chains and bracelets were, she couldn't reach down to sit, so she had to stand. But standing through the day that way without moving is hard. After it passed some long time, her legs didn't do so good, and she sagged. And come late in the day, she was most hanging on the chains. Her arms were up, and she was having to hurt. I stood and watched for a spell and cried some, but she stopped me. You take care of the young ones. Go now. They'll be dirty and stinking if you don't change the rags on them. You run along, I'll be fine. Took forever, waiting on the day. Mammy hanging that way. I thought once of running to the fields to tell John. Wouldn't do no good. Driver work in the fields, he see me coming, he just put me to work. They say if you can walk to the fields, you can work. So I be working and not here, and John couldn't do nothing anyway. They just keep him there no matter what I say. So nothing. Waller, he keep his white maggot own self in the White House all the day. Don't come out but once to see me standing by Mammy. The sun works across the sky, cooking her. I brought her water again and a piece of cornbread I'd been saving since morning food, but she shook her head. I'll just throw it up when he comes to whipping me. You go now. Get the rags ready for my back and the salt. I can't. Yes, you can. Go do it. Finally, it came on to be dark, and the hands come in from the field. Part of the afternoon, I had the young ones to make a trough of cold food so they had enough to eat. They had to walk past the spring house, and they saw Mammy, but there wasn't nothing they could do. I went up to John and told him what happened. Damn, he shook his head. I should have warned you about making words. I knew. I was just excited to be making my first word. I got to writing it in the dirt, and he caught me. Waller caught me. He's gonna whip her. Mammy, gonna whip her into rags. John didn't say anything. He looked to where Mammy hung on the spring house. His eyes were flat. Bastard! I was going to say more. Say, can you stop it? Can you say something? But I heard the door on the White House open and Waller came out. He made gas and spit like he had just ate a big meal and walked across the yard. Stopped. All of you get out here and watch. He bellowed like an old bull, then turned. Didn't go to the spring house. Didn't have a whip. Instead, he went to the barn and went inside. Come out in a breath or two, and he was carrying a horse harness. He went to the buggy by the carriage shed and hooked the harness like he had a horse in it, except it was empty. Then he went back to the spring house, looked at Mammy. You gonna tell me who's teaching him to read? Mammy been hanging, but she stood now and gave him the big eye again. I don't know nothing about reading or writing. God damn you. He hit her with his fist. Then he unhooked her from the chains and ripped her clothes from off her body and dragged her naked to the harness. "Put it on. I feel like a ride in the buggy." Mammy put the collar around her neck with the lines going back to the buggy. Stood there, looking up at the sky. I couldn't keep my eyes down, but the men did. They didn't look at her, looked at the ground. Waller climbed into the buggy and sat in the seat. He reached under the footboard and come up with a whip. "Pull, damn you." The whip snaked out from the buggy seat like it was alive and flicked, and blood come on Mammy's shoulder. Big cut. She started pulling, but it wasn't good enough. She strained and heaved, and the wagon, it moved, and Waller kept saying, "Faster, damn it, faster." And the whip come again and again, blood running down her back, the buggy moving across the yard, and I hear in back of me, "She don't know nothing. It was me that taught the girl the letters." I turned, and John was standing there. He had stepped forward, and he pointed to Mammy. "Let her be. She don't know nothing about it. It was all me." Waller looked at him the way a cat looks at a mouse caught in a corner. He smiled. Ugly smile. "Well, I might have guessed." He stepped down from the buggy and moved to John. "Why don't you just go over there and put yourself in those irons on the spring house wall?" I thought John wasn't going to do it. He held for 1, 2 blinks of my eyes. Waller had the whip in his left hand, coiled but ready. His right hand was on the butt of the big pistol in his belt. 2 blinks, then John moved. He walked to the spring house and put the bracelets on. He wasn't wearing a shirt, and when he turned his back, the sun caught the scars from the old whippings, rippled and ridged. There's nowhere for the whip to hit, I thought. Can't hit nothing new, no new meat. Stupid, the way my thinking worked. But Waller, he wasn't set for whipping. He made one of the field hands to fetch the stump used for chopping the heads off chickens, sent another hand to the blacksmith lean-to for a wide chisel and a hammer. Then he turned to us, all standing, watching. I had moved to Mammy, but she shook her head, stood. "It is wrong to learn to read." Waller's voice loud, bouncing off the buildings. "It is against the law for you to read, to know any letters, to know any counting is wrong. Punishment according to the law is removal of an extremity." We don't know all the words, never heard extremity before, but we don't need to know. Waller had 2 field hands to hold one of John's feet on the block. He put the chisel to the middle toe and swung the hammer. Thunk! The toe came off clean, jumped away from the chisel and fell in the dirt, blood squirting out all over the block. John, he jerked the foot so hard it knocked one of the field hands over. But quiet, not even a grunt out of him. He didn't look down either, just kept staring off into the fields next to the spring house. "Other foot." Waller spit and wiped the chisel off on the stump. The 2 field hands grabbed John's left leg. The one next to the wall of the spring house, his name is Robe. He take it slow. Doesn't move fast, so you could see it was bothering him. And Waller snaps like a breaking stick. "It can be your toe, too. It doesn't cost more to cut another one off." So Robe, he puts John's foot up there, and Waller puts the chisel on it. Thunk! This time was not so clean. The foot jerks back and the toe is caught by some skin the chisel missed. "Hold it up, damn it!" They hold the foot to the block. John, he's still not making any sounds, but his face is stiff, like it's carved out of rock, and there's sweat pouring off his forehead, his neck, down his chest. He's soaked. Waller cuts the last bit of skin. "There. That'll teach you to mess with things you shouldn't. Get a rag and some grease on that." He walked back to the White House without looking back, and as soon as he was away from us, we went to helping. The two hands carried John between them to the quarters, and I went to Mammy. "Fetch the salt," she told me. "Get it in these cuts, and 'fore I pass out, for God's sake, cover me with something so I ain't naked before the Lord." So I did, and she swooned some with the pain and went down, and I frotched her dress and helped her put it on her, and then helped her back to the quarters because her legs, they didn't work right from hanging and standing all day. All the time I'm thinking, be a hell. Be a good hell with fire and brimstone and devils cutting skin off backs like Mammy says. Be a good goddamn hell with demons eating at you, pulling your guts out. Be the worst hell there is to be. And put Waller in it. Chapter 6. John, he down for 3 nights. Mammy come up right away, but we greased and wrapped John's feet in rags Mammy boiled in the pot for cooking food, and he stayed on his back. For the first night he was quiet and didn't say nothing, just to lay and look at the ceiling, night and day, except to use a can Mammy put there for him to use. Second night, he called me over to where he lay. "What?" I asked. "H." "What?" "That's the next letter. H. It sounds huh or hey. It's a funny letter because it doesn't make any difference how it stands. Goes up, goes down. Doesn't matter. It's the same. He makes the letter in the dirt. H. Mammy, she was in the other end, and she came walking down to us. The young ones be out playing, everybody else in the field. I thought she would roar at him, maybe gut him. But she's smiling. "Are you addling the brain?" she asked. He nodded. On his side, laying like a broke dog. He smiled back. "I don't get smarter, just older. You know what he'll do if he catches you teaching letters again? You ain't got so many more toes. 2 more nights. I'm gone." "On those feet?" "On these feet." "You bleed out. I knew you were going, but wait a week." "How'd you know I was going?" "You were always going. When you came here, they brought you in the collar. You are born to leave." John's smile grew wider. "We should have met some other place." "Another time," Mammy, she snorted. "I make 2 of you, old enough to be your mother." John laughed, rolling deep sound. "Maybe so. That doesn't matter so much." Mammy, she went on, and he lay back. Looked to me. "Make the H. Make the sound, then a letter. When you get done, fetch me a piece of rawhide from the barn so big." He held up his hands. "I need to make some shoes." And in 2 nights, like he said, he was gone. He made the shoes out of rawhide and put rags around his toes, and on the night he was to leave, he made me to froth him lard and pepper. For the dogs, he said. He rubbed the lard thick on the bottom of each shoe, and wiped pepper in the lard and stood to leave. Throws their smell off to the side. Everybody asleep, even Mammy, except me. I'll be back, he said. Got some things to do, and I'll be back. But I knew he was lying, just being good, saying the good things to hear. He ain't coming back, I thought, and watched him leave, hobbling on his stiff shoes and sole feet covered with rags. Man gets out of here, I thought, gets clear again, he won't never come be here again. Never coming back. Not unless the dogs catched him. Chapter 7. Wrong again. Only not right away. He made it clean away. The next day, Waller, he took the dogs and 2 field hands and his horse and set off swearing and stinking. 2 days be gone, and he come back and make a storm around the place, so we all know John, he made it. He be gone. Mammy, she cried in a happy way, and I smiled some for a time and hoped him well, though it left me hanging. I had only the same letters as on both hands, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J. I could write them and read them, and I took to making words in my head with them. Made hid, and fib, and jab, and had, and big. Other words, but I didn't dare write 'em in the dirt. Waller catch me, and he'd make a tobacco pouch out of my skin. So I did them in my head, and tried to see the words, see the letters. But summer went, and then we took in crops. Cotton and corn and killing pigs came. Into fall. I still tried to make the letters in my head and the words. But my troubles came, and though I hid it, I knew they'd get to finding out and send me to the breeding shed. I was in a misery. Mammy, she worked to cheer me, but it didn't do any good. I was feared and worried day to day that I'd be found out. Come a night in winter, leaves gone, pigs all killed, and hams hanging in the smokehouse. I sat in the dark, in the corner of the quarters, wishing I could go back a season to where I didn't have the troubles. And I heard a sound next to me in the dark. And it was him. John, be right there next to me. Come on, he said. What? Follow me. We got to go so's you can get back before first light. Go where? He smiled, took my hand, led me to the door. School. We got to go to school. Don't you want to learn the rest of the letters? But... And we go. I was never off the place. Been only once to the fields where the corn and cotton grow. John, he'd take me across the fields, out the other end into thick trees, down into some brushy ditches along the river. Suddenly he stopped. It'd be pitch dark. Any light from the stars can't get through the trees and brush, and we stand for 2, 3 deep breaths. Then I smell it. Smoke. Faint smoke, and John, he leads me down a ditch until we hit a wall of solid brush. The smoke smell is strong now. Stink of pitch burning. John, he whistled like a catbird, and there was a rustle of brush, and then a slit of yellow light opened, and he pulled me into the brush. Inside the brush, there is light, bright yellow from 3 pitch torches being held by 3 people. But there's more people there. Same as all on one hand, thumb, and the one next to it on the other. They're all smiling at me. I don't know any of them, but they're all smiling. Short boy comes up to me. We from over the hill at the stankin' place. 2 from there, and the rest from places I didn't know nothing about those places, but I smiled back. You all know John from before? He nodded. He come at night. Tell us to learn some letters, then tell us to come here, to school. I didn't know what a school was, what it was supposed to be. This was slats of brush dragged and pushed over a ditch, thicker and thicker, and closed in on the ends. Be a pit. Pit school. John, he moved to the end and held one of the torches up. In the other hand, he held a book. I'd seen a book. Saw one of the women at the White House looking into one. This is a catalog. John held the book up. It is full of things you can send for and own if you have money. They use it all the time, the whites. You read it, and it'll tell you things. It has pictures and writing to talk about the pictures. Each of you come up and see it. Be quick now. We only have a couple of hours, and I want to give you some letters. Sarny, you know some of them. You help me. Everybody looked at me. Only know this many, I said, holding up my hands. That's a good start. They don't know more than one or two. So you help me until we get to know how many you know. Then we can all work together. We looked at the catalog, and I can't believe it. Here in the school, pit school, covered over so the light won't show out of the ditch from the torches, we look at the catalog. All the things we don't have, dresses and shoes with buttons and little gloves and pretty hats and overalls. And I started crying, thinking of all the things, all the pretty things. And then I see it. Picture of a horse. Got a thing around his head for feeding him, around his head and hanging over his nose. Bag. Says it right there, under the picture. There's other words, but right there it says to me, bag. I know this one. I pointed out the word to John. This one right here. It is bag. That's a bag on a horse's nose. He laughed. Loved the laugh. Same deep black laugh, like night thunder. Soon, Sarny, soon you'll be able to read them all. All of you will. Now let's start so you can get back. And we do. I take a stick, rub some dirt clear, and draw the lines in the dirt for 3 of them who watch. A. Feels good to write again. Words. Late he come walking. Late in the night, when they in the White House are all asleep, and we be asleep, and nobody can know nothing. Late when the moon is down and the stars are hiding in clouds. Late when it isn't the day before, and it don't seem like ever the new day will come. That late, he come walking. In the night he come walking. Late in the night, and when he walks he leaves the tracks that we find in the soft dirt down by where the drive meets the road. In the soft, warm dirt in the sun, we see his tracks with the middle toe missing on the left foot, and the middle toe missing on the right. And we know. It be Nightjohn. Late he come walking, and nobody else knows. Nobody from the big house or the other big houses know, but we do. We know. Late he come walking, and it be Nightjohn, and he bringing us the way to know.
The end. You've been listening to Nightjohn by Gary Paulsen, narrated by Michelle Denise Woods. During master recording at Recorded Books New York studios, the author took time out to talk about how Nightjohn came to be. A very disciplined and honest writer, Paulsen insists that all of his research be done from, as he puts it, personal inspection at 0 altitude. We asked if this approach had to be different for Nightjohn, which is set in the 1850s. Gary Paulsen.
When I started the whole idea of Nightjohn, it wasn't about Nightjohn. It was about Sally Hemings. I was enraged that nobody had written a biography of this woman, who had been a woman named Betty Hemings, who was a slave, belonged to a man named John Wales, who became Thomas Jefferson's father-in-law. And John Wales, by this particular slave, had a baby. And her name was Sally. I mean, he raped her and had a baby. And Sally was about a year old when Thomas Jefferson married Martha Wales, who was the white daughter of this guy who had fathered this, through rape, had fathered this child. And when Jefferson married her, as part of a dowry that came to slaves, or, many slaves, depending on who you read, between 40 and 80 slaves. One of them was Betty Hemings, whose daughter was Sally, and Sally became Jefferson's property because of marriage. And he raised her in the house. She was raised in the home. And she was so close to the family that when his white wife died, when Sally was 9, it'd be 8 years later, she died. Sally was the bedside slave in the bedroom that emptied the pot and different things, took care of her while she was dying. And then Jefferson started to use her when she was 12 or 13, maybe 14. The times are fuzzy. And this is controversial, and there are people who dispute it, but I do not. I did research for years on this thing, trying to find out what really happened. And I was going to do a biography of Sally. I was not after Jefferson, although it would have come out that way, I think. But I wanted Sally to be known. She fought her whole life to get her kids free. They were Jefferson's kids. And none of them were freed. Neither was she. She died. Jefferson was... there's too much made of him. He didn't build Monticello. A guy named Isaac did. Isaac was beautiful. There's a photograph of him. Not a painting. An actual daguerreotype of this Isaac. He was a carpenter. He was a slave. And he was a carpenter at Monticello, and he built most of what people go there and see. And nobody even talks about him. They talk about Jefferson like Jefferson couldn't hold a hammer. He was incompetent. He was economically incompetent. He died bankrupt. Well, never mind. I don't want to talk about Jefferson. But the point is that the person who really built that place, the people who really built it were black people, were African-American people. But I started doing research on Sally over 6 years ago, 5, 6 years ago, trying to write about her. And there isn't enough. It's like smoke. You'd grab it and it just move away. Somebody sent me a picture of her grave once, and I sat there and bawled. It's a little bitty stone. She doesn't have a memorial. She isn't down there in Washington in the big memorial place, She just had a little block of stone. When Jefferson died, Sally was sold on the block. And the bill of sale read, one 53-year-old woman worth $50. And her children were sold. So I decided I would write something about this. But when I was doing the research for Sally, I ran into all these other stories. God, I got into the Slave Chronicles. They're 18-volume set. I didn't get all the volumes. I mean, I don't have any of them now, but I got to look at them. And they're all in dialect. They're very hard to read. They're beautiful and horrible at the same time. They're people who were interviewed right after slavery and asked to talk about it. And a lot of this was done during the 30s, during the Depression. And many of the people I talked to had been slaves, were still alive then. They were very old. But they talked about it, and it wasn't all plucking at the banjo down, having a nice time in the evenings. It was very bad what went on.
We asked author Gary Paulsen why clandestine schools like the one described in Nightjohn got started. Gary Paulsen.
Actually, I read several different places where they tried to establish schools. They call them pit schools. And the reason they would do that, they'd find a pit somewhere, or a gully or a ditch, and then cover it with brush so the light from torches wouldn't get out. And they would crawl in there and try to learn to read. And they knew that not all of them, but many of them knew that if they could read, they could be free. If they would know more, and they would use mail order catalogs and letters. They'd steal letters sometimes and read them, try to read them. The penalties were terrible. The penalties for learning to read were at least as strenuous as those for escaping, which were usually dismemberment. What they would do with escapees or readers is start with a toe, take a toe off, or two toes. If a person ran, again, they'd cut the front half of the foot off, and they castrate too, because it was said to tame them down, to castrate them. And then finally they would kill them if they were incorrigible at reading or trying to learn. Learning was wrong for that. The way you get out of slavery is through knowledge. I mean, you may have to use force too. At some point, you're going to have to use force. If somebody has you as a slave, they're not going to relinquish their control over you. Jefferson wrote pieces against slavery. He hated it, but he never sold it. He never got rid of his slaves. There were actually, and this is sad, but there were slaves who didn't want to be free. Not many, I'll say that. But I ran into several places where, this is again during the Depression, they were talking to these people. And they said, someone during the Depression said that it was better when they were slaves, that they had food when they were slaves, and that not that they wanted to be slaves again, but that they had a better life as far as food. Not many though, probably 4. Out of hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of things that I read, probably 4 people were like that. So no. The vast 99.9% majority of the things I read about, the people did not want to be slaves. They hated it, and they weren't after Papa. They didn't want anybody to take care of them. They wanted to be on their own.
We asked the author how the myth that there were slaves who wanted to remain on the plantation could have been sustained so long. Gary Paulsen.
It is a myth that was kept in with atrocious force. Literally, atrocities were committed. Millions of people were killed to make this myth live. And indeed, from 1890 to 1920, in the South, 14,000 men were lynched. And young men, and they were lynched because they wanted to learn to read, because they wanted to vote, because they wanted a say in their own life. They weren't lynched for criminal crimes. They didn't do anything wrong, most of them. In the last 10 years, 6 years, 40 people in Mississippi jails have been hung. Now they call them suicides. Maybe they're suicides. But I have that little bit of skepticism in there. That's what they did in South Africa, too. They call them suicides. And it's funny how none of the suicides occurred out of the jails, isn't it?
You've been listening to the author, Gary Paulsen, talking about the writing of Nightjohn. If you've enjoyed this book, Recorded Books is pleased to offer several other titles by Gary Paulsen, including The Voyage of the Frog, narrated by Karen McHugh. The Voyage of the Frog is the story of a young boy's adventure alone at sea in a sailboat, where he must face storms and sharks and his own fear and ignorance. You'll find a wide selection of titles, including bestsellers, mysteries, classics, histories, and more in the Recorded Books catalog. So to order another Recorded Book or for a copy of our latest listing, call us, toll-free, nationwide, at 1-800-638-1304. You can order by phone with Visa or MasterCard, or by writing to us, or by faxing us at 410-535-5499. Don't forget to ask about easy 30-day rentals by mail. And thank you for being a Recorded Books reader.